Science's researchers did something quite spectacular that we've been talking about here for months. In other words, what I have been proposing to you is that what we call and what we have learned to call the soul is actually photon. Okay, it's light particles that are inside of our body, intelligent light that operates the body. In other words, that's who we are. Our personality, our soul, our spirit is actually photon. And so what Hitoshi Akamura in Tokyo did was he got into a room and he had people standing there or sitting there, and he had cameras focused on them, and the lights were turned off. It was pitch black. There was absolutely no light whatsoever. And he left the cameras on in a time-lapse type of a thing for 10 minutes. Let me show you what he said as to what they did. The human body, he said, literally glows, emitting a visible light in extremely small quantities at levels that rise and fall with the day. To learn more about this faint visible light, scientists in Japan employed extraordinarily sensitive cameras capable of detecting single photons. 5 male volunteers in their 20s were placed in front of the camera darkness for 20 minutes every 3 hours from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. Researcher Hitoshi Akamura, a biologist at Kyoto University in Japan. Now, what happened was they were able to show us, and this just happened a couple of weeks ago, they were able to show us the first pictures ever taken of the human soul, the first pictures ever taken of the human spirit. And these are the pictures. You see? There they are. I mean, there was no lights on these people. It was a pitch black room. The light that you see is coming from the people. Now, not only does that prove that what they call soul or what they call spirit is photon, but it proves the aura. I've had people who sit and watch me and say, several times people will say, well, you know, I just want to tell you, I don't know, but I saw this like blue or green light around you. And I always said, hey, you know, because that's, I guess it's okay. But that proves it, doesn't it? We all have blue or green light around us. You see, there's proof. There is scientific proof that what operates our body, we as beings inside of these physical bodies are photons. And now there's a picture of it. There's a picture of your soul or your spirit right there. Now, the point that makes it so interesting and why we push so hard on this photon business is because it says in the Bible, God is not a man, God is light. So if what we call God is not a man, and if what we call God is light, then God has to be photon. There's no other thing it can be. And if Jesus is the Son of God, Jesus is the Son of photon, and if we are created in the image and likeness of God, then we are photon as well. And there's the proof. You see? Charles, you mind me telling a little story about you? Okay, Charles, as you know, has had cancer, and he's been going through treatments for it, and he's doing very well. I get completely excited, but I'll tell you why I'm more excited than ever. This is the first time I've ever heard this, and Joan's been a nurse for, how many, 116 years or whatever? And it's the first time she's ever heard this. But Charles has been going for radiation for the brain, you know. And Maxine was down with him at the hospital, and while Charles was laid out there, she was asking one of the technical people, you know, what is happening? What's going on there? And the technician or whoever, the radiologist said, we are bombarding his head with photons. And I thought, wow. I said this in some of these born-again churches years ago, but boy, this is a good time to say hallelujah. Because, you know, if God is photons, he's getting bombarded with God. Do you see how exciting this is? Once you know. Once you know. And I'll tell you something, when you look around, and maybe you'll see him later, but if 2 weeks ago, he couldn't even hardly walk, and he's strutting again. And so I'm very excited about that. And so there you see the photons. But there was a couple other deal sealers, because, you know, people have come in here, and some people, I mean, to some people, this is a regular religious place. They come back every 2 or 3 years. They're here like clockwork, you know. I mean, it's really exciting to see them. I said, well, you're back, yes. But what comes out of this place, you can take out of here and prove, you know what I mean? No matter what they say. So this is one thing. There's a picture of the soul. There's a picture of the spirit. There was another one. I proposed back in 1997 that supernova 1987 was the 7th seal of the book of Revelation. The book of Revelation is Greek mythology. There is nothing religious in it. It is pure Greek mythology built around all types of symbolisms. And so I looked and I saw the 7th seal of Revelation because of the fire in the center. But I said, you know, I needed a deal sealer of some kind, and I thought I had a pretty strong case. But then recently, something came to my attention. It was a deal sealer. Here are the 7 angels in the book of Revelation. Look at the 7 angels in the book of Revelation. And what does it say? It says, upon the cloud one set like the sun, on his head a golden crown, and in his hand a sharp sickle. And in the next one, another angel, thrust in your sickle. And then the next one, and he thrust in his sickle. And another angel, in number 17, having a sharp sickle. And another angel had power over fire, and he said, thrust in your sharp sickle. And the angel thrust in his sickle and gathered the vine of the earth and the winepress and the wrath of God. All the sickles on the 7th angel. Well, lo and behold, something came along from the Harvard Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics and the National Aeronautics and Space Administration that sealed the deal for us. And this is it. Here's a picture from NASA, and look at the thing. The white sickle-shaped material in the center is the visible part of the shredded star rushing out at 3,000 kilometers. The 7th seal of the book of Revelation, in the center of the eye on fire, is a sickle. That's a deal sealer. And I don't really care who says anything. And you don't have to care anything. You go to any church from here to wherever you want to go and get me proof like that from them of anything they've ever said. And I'm just giving you 2 proofs. I proposed that Carina was the 7th angel of the book of Revelation. And you know, one of the amazing things about it is that it says that it says the 7th angel of the book of Revelation is connected to the son of David. That's in Revelation. Well then, let me show you this from the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. What does it say? The Chandra image contains some puzzling things. This is about Eta Carina, of how a star can produce such intense X-rays, agreed Professor Chris, David's son. Couldn't his name be anything? Couldn't it be Chris Kringle? Or couldn't it be Joe Blow? Or Alvira? Couldn't it be any billion, trillion, skillion name? But what is his name? And he's connected with Eta Carina, the 7th angel. David's son. His name is the son of David. And he's at the University of Minnesota, investigator for the Eta Carina observations by Hubble. There's 3 deal sealers. 3. I say, wow, these are all coincidences. Yeah. They're not coincidences. I propose Galaxy NG 4555 is the location where light beings who oversee the work on Earth is done. In other words, where they live. The photons, if you wish, come from NGC 4555. The deal sealer was I was manager of the cable company up in Bricktown and Point Pleasant for 22 years. And they have a 250-foot tower out there. And it wasn't until I left that particular position that somebody showed me and wanted me to check the coordinates evidence of the tower out there that I saw something that made me fall out of the chair. For 20 years I sat there next to that tower, bringing information down from space. And let me show you the license, the Federal Aeronautics and Space Administration license. What does it say the latitude is? 4555. If that was 4655 or 4155 or it's 4555. It's a deal sealer. I don't need any more. You see, well, that's why I get so confident about this stuff. Because what comes flying in is absolute proof. I mean, I was talking about 4555 for what, 20 years? And then finally I see the copy of this thing and it's 4555. That's good enough. Listen. Those of you who have been listening to me for many years know that I said many, many years ago what Jesus meant when he said, if your eye be single, your body will fill with light. And what do we say? If you stimulate the pineal gland of your body, your body will fill with melatonin. I know we were talking about melatonin 20 years ago. And what did we recently see from science? Remember, Jesus said, if your eye be single, pineal gland, your body will fill with light. Now what does this say? The pineal gland or epiphysis synthesizes and secretes melatonin, a structurally simple hormone that communicates information about environmental lighting to various parts of the body. The light transducing ability of the pineal gland has led some to call the pineal the third eye. Jesus said, if your eye be single, your body will fill with light. Scientists say that the pineal gland secretes melatonin that communicates information about environmental lighting to various parts of the body. That's a deal sealer. That's proof. Go across the street to the church. Ask them, show me some proof. You know what they're going to say? You need faith. And what? And me. You gotta believe what I say because I'm Pastor McFeely. Stop. But I mean, aren't people, can't we be intelligent enough and mature enough to say, my God, you're seeing all of this stuff, even coming out of scriptures, because of the fact that it was all written by Greek mythologists and who had access to the works of Democritus and Plato and Aristotle and Socrates and Diogenes and all of these Eases who knew all of this stuff. Consider the word epiphysis. See that? The pineal gland or epiphysis. The pineal gland in the center of your brain, which is the light receptor of the brain, is called epiphysis. If you look up the word epiphysis in any dictionary, it will say the pineal gland. If you look up the word pineal gland, it will say epiphysis. Now, consider the word epiphysis, then consider the word epiphany. Consider that the epiphysis or pineal gland is the seventh seal, the seventh chakra, that point of kundalini or enlightenment. All right? It's the place of enlightenment. Now, what does the word epiphany mean? An epiphany, from ancient Greek, manifestation, a striking appearance, the sudden realization or comprehension of the largest essence or meaning of something, a divine manifestation. So then why do they call the pineal gland, the single eye, epiphysis, which means a divine manifestation, an appearance of divine or superhuman being, an illuminating realization of discovery, often resulting in personal feeling of elation, awe, or wonder? Why do they call the single eye, the pineal gland of the brain, epiphysis? If that's not what it's, because that is what reveals the manifestation of the higher photon lights that we call God and Jesus. It is through the single eye. And that is the thing that religious people avoid like the plague, manifesting in the light through the single eye in meditation. And when they do that, they miss the entire Jesus message. Entirely. Because Epiphany doesn't happen in a church. Epiphany doesn't happen on some holiday. Epiphany happens in your brain. And that's the proof. Because epiphysis, is the pineal gland of the brain, and the pineal gland is in the center of your brain. That's the proof. Now, I show you these things because I want you to have confidence in what you're seeing and what you're hearing here. I have never, since I have been here, I have never said anything and told you, well, you should believe this way, or you should have faith. Every single time that I have ever been here, ever said a word, I have provided scientific proof about what I've said. And I have given you the names of the scientists or the physicists who said it, and I have showed you the scriptures in the Bible where it coordinates. Now, the information that we're getting here, and you're seeing here, is obviously coming from someplace, from somebody. Nobody else is saying this, so why? Who is it? Look around. I don't know. Where is it? Who's in this room with us? Who's feeding it? Well, you know, isn't it amazing? I said, who's in this room with us? Some guy standing there we can't see. Checking on me if I'm saying the right stuff. What's to say? But when your frequency shifts here in the upcoming 24, you'll see this guy. What has been said here about the unknown has been proven to be true in the world of the known. And the reason that I am shouting it out this time is because we're running out of time in our approach to the 24th, and I want you to be confident that nothing will ever be said from this speaker's platform that is not proven scientifically. Nothing. Now, in our last meeting together, we hit on 2 points that stirred interest. One, I said Adam and Eve are not two people. Adam and Eve is a mythology story. I mean, what were two English people doing in the middle of this primeval place? Adam and Eve are part of us. Adam and Eve are parts of the male and the female psyche in every being. You all have Adam and you all have Eve. We all do. Some people have a little too much Adam, some people have a little too much Eve, but I mean, that's not the problem. I'm not going to get into that. The second point, Exodus, is not something that happened in Egypt. It never happened. There never were hundreds of thousands of Jewish people roaming around the desert. There never was a guy who was able to open the Red Sea so everybody can run across. It never happened. It is much more important than that. It happens to every human being on the face of the planet in here. Exodus is in your brain where you make your escape from the bondage of the material and the doctrinal and the governmental and the corporate and the religious left side that imprint, whatever the word is, that screws your head up, and so that you can cross the Red Sea, which is the corpus callosum of the brain, to the promised land, which is the right side. Now, the idea of Adam and Eve representing not two people, but that which is in every living being is in the Bible. I wouldn't make this stuff up. I don't have any right to make things up and just say, listen, there was no Adam and Eve. This is Adam and Eve were one person inside of you. You could look at me and you say, why the heck were you off saying that? I'll show you where I get off saying that. I get off saying it because Genesis 5:1 says, male and female created he them and called their name Adam. End of discussion. Now, I mean, how long have you been alive? And people say, well, you know, that woman was the one that screwed everything up because the snake told her to eat the apple. And, you know, anybody could tell you when a snake comes up and says something, you really shouldn't listen to them. Jesus. Yeah, no wonder we're all nuts. Brilliant people. You got doctors and scientists and all of this, and they come in church and they check their brains at the door and they sit there and they listen to this guy tell them about the snake, tell the lady to eat the apple, and then from that goes everything that gets screwed up. The lady does, so she's got to wear a hat when she goes in the church. So there it is. We are all male and we are all female. The male part is the physical and the intellectual. The female part is the emotional, boo-hoo, and spiritual. And so they've got to come together like that, and that makes the complete person. And yet religion of all kinds all over the world has taken that stupid story about a woman talking to a snake and used that to oppress women from the earliest possible time. And I mean, you've got some places now where a woman walks around and she's got a windshield in the front of her face to see her. So the Bible itself makes it clear that in the story, religion has misinterpreted to subvert the woman under the man. Adam is both Adam and Eve. It is one being. It is one mind that is both intellect and emotion, and it was the emotion that gave in to the serpent. Well, who's the serpent? If you feel around the back, you'll see a thing that goes up your back, and that's the serpent. That's the spine. And when the serpent can rise as the Kundalini serpent, or it can be the aggressive bodily function that causes us to get in all kinds of trouble. But not understanding this has caused religion to bring down a form of bondage against women, even though it says in the book, it's all male and female. There was no two people that are any different than either. They're all called Adam, and they're all male and female. So it wasn't a woman that did this. It was, excuse me, the emotional part of our being that gives in to the temptations to do wrong. But what did we do? We deliberately, when I say we, I'm talking about the religions of the world, deliberately manipulated the mythology to literally create a bizarre social order in which women are considered less than men, not on the basis of intelligence, but on the basis of their sex. And it was a deliberate thing that was done. I mean, come on. Did you ever read the Declaration of Independence? We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. Oh, I know, but that just means mankind. Oh, no, it does not, because until 75 years ago, women were not allowed to vote under the Declaration of Independence. Oh, no, it meant all men are created equal. And it comes from the crap that poured out from religion when they misinterpreted the scriptures and said the woman talked to the snake. And consider it was only 100 years ago when women in this country were allowed to vote. How can something like this, which permeates all of religion, be considered good? It is the epitome of evil, and yet it is the foundation of religion. The foundation of religion is the epitome of evil because they deliberately degrade one party of the human life experience, namely the female. So another amazing point in the Bible is in Exodus, where God planned to do bad things. And Moses, by telling God that it was a bad idea, actually got God to change his mind. You know, and you know, in these churches, they said, yes, he really talked to him and said, oh, God, you're really a bad God. You are a bad God, and you are screwing this whole thing up for everyone. And God is saying, oh, boy, I guess you're right, Mo. I'll never do that again. Jesus, I mean, come on, where are we? And we're all out there sitting listening, and then we get done telling us this damn stupid story. We get up and sing, this is the day that the Lord has made. We're all nuts. I gotta tell you something. Exodus 32:11. And Moses said to God, why are you losing your temper? The Egyptians will say you brought them out of the desert to kill them in the mountains and wipe them out from the face of the earth. Turn away and repent of this evil against your people, you nasty God. What kind of God are you? So here's a man telling God to cool it and control his temper, and God changes his mind because Moses explained. But this isn't the end of the story. This is great. You know what happens here? God gets pissed. And it says in the next thing, Exodus, and the Lord said to Moses, when you return, come to the tavern, and I'm going to meet you there. And it says that God was going to kill him. The Lord planned to kill Moses. Yeah. So they were going to meet at the Desert Inn, I guess. I don't know. Knocked back a couple of cool ones, Moses and God. And God was going to say, Mo, you know, you really got me pissed off the other night, and it seemed like, hey, take this sucker, bang, bang, you know? And this is the Bible. The Word of God. So there it is. God's hero is Moses, and he's looking to get him at a tavern to kill him. Now, Al Lero raised an interesting question. Because I said all these stories are mythology, and they're all talking about what's going on inside of your brain. See? Your will is Moses. That photon in there is Moses. You open the Red Sea when you make a way in meditation to cross over to the Promised Land, which is the right hemisphere. And the Pharaoh is religion, government. It could be the job. It could be the corporation. It could be the systems that hold you in bondage so that you don't know what to do. You can't figure out which way to turn. But Al raised an interesting question. Obviously, this is mythology, because we have a man conversing with God and telling God he better change his ways. And this would obviously be a story to explain the workings of the mind. In other words, think of this. Because Al said, well, now wait a minute. If you're saying that Moses was talking to God and talked God out of doing something, and God changed his mind, how do you bring that into our heads, each one of us? I mean, how does that sit into our heads? How can we rationalize this? God's planning to do evil. Moses talks him out of it. How can it be rationalized as an activity of the mind? And so I did a little meditation. I always do. I really do. I sit and I hold my breath and I just sit for a while, and maybe 10, 15 seconds. And what we have to do is we have to look at the entire myth. What is this myth about? It's about escaping from the mental and physical bondage to a new experience. But still, as Al said, how do you fit in God talking with a man and the man getting God to change his? How can that be explained as something inside of our head? So let's back off a bit, start at the beginning, and let's try to put some common sense here in arriving at a conclusion. You ready? This is a story. The story was written in a book by people. There was no angel hanging in the sky with a ballpoint pen writing and then handing it down. Can you reach up here a little higher? That didn't happen. there's no doubt as to where the story was written and who wrote it. There are differing opinions regarding the origin of the Septuagint, which was translated by Greek-speaking Jews in Alexandria, Egypt. According to one tradition, it was begun specifically at the request of Ptolemy Philadelphus, who wished to have a copy of the Bible for the great Alexandrian library. 72 skilled Jewish language experts were brought to Egypt, where they first translated the Pentateuch, Exodus, and so forth, and then the rest of what is commonly known as the Old Testament from the original Hebrew. So what they did, when Alexander the Great went through Israel, he was looking to gather up some, and he got some of these guys that were writers, and they said, we really would like to go along and write, under the Greek literature, Greek mythology. So they went up there. They were called Hellenists. So now the Bible is being turned from old stories of tribal traditions that were into this well-versed book that was written in Alexandria, Egypt, and now becomes filled with Greek mythology. And I'll tell you something. The Septuagint is not ever used by Jewish people because they said there are absurdities in it. The absurdities that they find is the Greek mythology. And that's what this whole thing is. So we have a group of people under the direction of Greek Ptolemies with access to Greek science writing a story in mythology. They talk among themselves. They were directed by Greek Ptolemies as to how this was all to come out. Now, you got to keep in mind. We'll cover this up. You got to keep in mind that the archaeological department of the University of Tel Aviv says that after 200 years of archaeological expeditions and excavations all over the place, they've never found one thing that's in the Bible. Nothing happened. So, which again proves it. But here we have, now there's something very important here as we consider that this is a story written by people under Greek authority. Socrates had set the standard about what you and I would be looking for. I had a guy write me, he said, well, you put down this word God. There were gods who came in Samaria, and there were gods that came down to the earth and all these guys. And I wrote back, I said, don't tell me they're gods, because the word God originated with Socrates. Anything before that, they might have called them aliens of some kind, but they weren't gods, because the word God comes from the word good, which was the Greek word that Socrates used to define the highest realm of existence that would bring us to the like mind. Here it was Socrates here, and as you can see, Socrates, the idea that humans possess virtues formed a common thread in Socrates. Virtue is the most valuable. The ideal life was spent in search of the good. Ultimately, virtue relates to the form of the good. To be truly good, not just being acting with right opinion, one must come to know the unchanging good in itself. That was the first time, and it made its way into the scriptures, that the word good was used to portray a higher realm of being, and it became the word God. Before that time, the word God was never used. It's very important. So this opens us to a deeper understanding of Moses interacting with God, to follow up on what Al said. And here now Moses is going to change God's mind. Now when we really understand what was being written, the interaction that goes on, we now find goes on in all of our minds between what is good and what is evil. Even in our little everyday affairs. I think this is a good idea. But no, that screwed things up for Renee, or maybe I better change it. So let's go to the Greek. We are Moses, and that's what the story's about. You and I are Moses, and we're dealing with ourselves. The constant talking that goes on within our mind. Seems like a good idea to me. Yeah, that would be a God idea. Does it make sense to you? People in a room writing the words in this story, they use the reference of Socrates seeking the good, and then the idea of Moses talking with God is the concept of you and me considering things which we perceive to be good. I think this is a good idea. I think if I park my car, even if it's on that other guy's lawn, sounds like a good idea to me. Wait a minute. He's liable to really get ticked off. Yeah, maybe I better not do this. When you come up with a good idea, and then you talk yourself out of it, Moses has just gotten God to repent. Do you understand what I'm coming from? The idea of God changing his mind is the concept that though we felt that a particular idea was good, that means it's a God idea, there were other circumstances that influenced us to move away from that concept to another path to accomplish the desired result. And so God repented or changed his mind, or good was changed. What we thought was good was not good. What we thought was God was not God. I am going to go up to the hospital and visit Beatrice. That's good. That's God. On my way to the hospital, I think I'll stop and rob the bank. That'll be good. I'll have money to buy flowers for Beatrice. Wait a minute now. I thought that was a good idea, but there might be cops in the area. I better not do that. Good. God has repented. Do you understand? So the entire conversation between Moses and God as to what is right and what is wrong is the conversation that you and I have all the time with ourselves, deciding on we're going to do this, we're going to do that, or we're going to change this, and what we perceive to be good then turns out to be not so good. Now, we got another part of the story that still lingers. God wants to meet Moses at the desert inn and blow his head off. The idea that God sought to kill Moses at the inn is the concept that decisions that we are always making in the busyness of our own mind become the inn. That's why Jesus could never be born in the inn, because the Christ cannot be born inside of us where all the business is going on. He has to be born in the quiet place of nature where the animals are, which is the right side. And so, when we come up with ideas out of the busyness of our brain and we have not submitted to meditation at all, then many times the ideas are contrary to developing a good result. Thus, the good thoughts start to begin to overwhelm those thoughts that are from the lower, and they start to push down those things that are obstructing us from accomplishing good. Now, let me see if I can figure this. If we're getting so many ideas that we think are good, but they're coming out of the busyness of the mind where we're getting all kinds of thoughts